Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome to the Volquest podcast. I'm Eric Kane alongside Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, and Rob Lewis. A lot going on right now over Volquest.com and on the Journal's Quarter. So come check us out. $1 for your first 7 days. And spring orange and white game coming up on Saturday. Recruiting never stops. Transfer portal is happening in basketball, and that's where we're going to start. Rob Lewis, pretty good couple of days for Tennessee. Got its first edition on Friday afternoon. And Jacoby Gillespie, an East Tennessee native, coming by way of Belmont, Maryland. And then on Sunday night, it was Vanderbilt forward Jalen Carey that made his announcement to Tennessee. So a couple of the first two of probably 3 or 4 additions via the portal.
Very good couple of days for Tennessee, and just a reminder that the old guy kind of knows what he's doing when it comes to the transfer portal. No matter how much fans may want to gnash their teeth and wail. And when Tennessee doesn't have 3 official visitors in the first 48 hours that the portal's open, I don't know that anybody. I mean, there's different rankings out there. Jacoby Gillespie, depending on who you talk to, is as sought after as anybody in this class. I mean, just fantastic addition, and the hometown connection made a ton of sense. Coming back to Greenville, but this kid is a big time player, explosive athlete, dynamic lead guard, and fills a glaring need perfectly. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be Zakai Ziegler, but you had some big shoes to fill, and you got a guy that has excelled at the high major level, just averaged 15 points and shot 40% from 3 in the Big Ten. Cannot say enough about the Jacoby Gillespie addition, and then Jalen Carey. I don't know. Tennessee fans maybe don't seem as excited about that one. I can tell you from talking to people around the program, they are as excited about that one as they are about Jacoby Gillespie, and that's not hype. That's not hyperbole. I could promise you this head coach is beyond sick of not being able to dump the ball inside and call a play to a guy with his back to back to the basket, and have a presumable hope of getting a foul shot or a bucket. And after what Carey did to them this year, I mean, Tennessee didn't have a post player have 2 games like Jalen Carey had, in my opinion. They had some guys score some points, but not in a traditional low post fashion. And man, the head coach loves that. And another thing that nobody will talk about, but is really important to Tennessee's style of basketball, the way they play, and talking to some people around the program. After Tennessee played at Vanderbilt, Tennessee staff thought Jalen Carey was the best screener they had played all season long. Again, that might not be something that gets fans fired up. That gets Tennessee's head basketball coach fired up. And he's excited to add a physical dude like that to the roster.
I was going to say, Rob, how important do you think is it to have, I don't want to say an enforcer like that, but I mean, a bruiser in the post? I mean, Felix is obviously got a game as a rim protector and, is bouncy and athletic. I know they like, JP Estrella if he can stay healthy and, the energy that Phillips brings, but just from a physical kind of bruiser type nature, how important is a guy like Carey for that group to kind of have sort of all types of post players, if you will?
I think it's really important. I mean, I think you saw that. We all talked about it when Tennessee played Houston. I mean, Tennessee's a tough team, and their kids are tough. I mean, they don't back down. Felix is tough. Cade Phillips is as tough as they come. But look at their shoulders, look at their thighs. I mean, they're not built like the Houston kids were. I mean, they got shoved around some. And again, that's not a toughness issue. It's not a mentality. But Houston, those kids are just built different. I mean, Carey is one of those type of guys. I mean, maybe not the highest flyer or whatever, but he is a physical player, knows how to use his body. And another thing you have to like with him and Gillespie, got multiple years to play. You're not talking about a grad transfer here. I mean, you're talking about a guy that can come in and be a part of your program.
When you look at Gillespie, if we go back to Gillespie, obviously you kind of rattled off what he does at the 3-point, shooting over 40%. He had, I want to say, 88 3-pointers this year. So obviously he can shoot the triple, but what else does he do well, from that one position?
I mean, he's a big time athlete. I mean, you can see when he attacks the rim, and you can see where he was a high school football player and a good one. I mean, he's got great upper body strength. He's got really good body control. I mean, I'm never going to be critical of Zakai, but this kid's built different. I mean, Zakai was not a good finisher. I mean, that's just you're not going to be at 5'9". I mean, he struggled with that. I mean, he was creative, he was crafty. I mean, sometimes he could, but often, he got in there and he was lost among the trees. I'm not saying Gillespie at 6'1" is not going to go down there and just tomahawk dunk on a lot of people, but he's built different to go in there and succeed a little bit, to finish for himself and others. And I don't know if we're ever going to see a defensive whiz like Zakai, but Gillespie's, he's in that zip code when you're just talking about quickness. And I don't know that anybody's going to be a jitterbug for 94 feet like we saw Zakai do, but you're not giving up a lot in that regards, at least in terms of the measurables at that position.
AP, you talked about these guys. I mean, it just seems like they both want to be here at Tennessee, and why wouldn't you, right? I mean, look at what Barnes has done the last couple of years. Look at where the program's at right now, development standpoint, to try to continue to play basketball. But it felt like in your interviews with both these guys that they just wanted to be here. And I know Gillespie's an East Tennessee guy, but also Carey as well.
Yeah, Eric, I mean, I thought both of them, they just epitomize, the word winning, right? Like they talk about winning. I asked, Jacoby, like, what is Tennessee getting in you? And he, basically just said, a guy who's willing to do anything to win. Sure, like he shoots the ball well from the outside and defense and facilitates, but, just a guy that wants to win. Jalen Carey, a guy that talking about winning for Coach Barnes, getting to the Final Four. Like sometimes you got to speak that stuff into existence and just start by talking about winning. And Tennessee's done a lot of it the last few years. I mean, Rob's wrote about it, Grant's wrote about it. I mean, the number of 30-win seasons under Rick Barnes, a couple of the best seasons in Tennessee basketball history. Want to continue that, and certainly, they're trying to do that by building a roster around what was left and adding to what they've currently added with both these kids.
I think it's interesting, Rob and Austin both, is that these kids, both these guys have had kind of a front row seat to Tennessee basketball in different ways, right? I mean, here's Gillespie, who's from Greenville, knows that. He goes to the mid-state and plays and then transfers to Maryland, succeeds at every stop along the way. But, Rob, he sees Dalton Connect. He sees Chaz Lanier. Here's Jalen, who plays against Tennessee, who sees the transfer success that Tennessee has had with guys. I think that has to resonate with people out there. I mean, I think these two have a unique perspective in that they've seen Tennessee up close, but they also have seen what this staff has been able to do with transfers. I mean, it's a great selling point they have to transfers right now in recruiting.
Hubbard, to your point, Tennessee just got 2 commitments from kids that didn't make a visit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's everything you're saying right there in a nutshell. I mean, they didn't have to come here and meet with the staff, and maybe it's different for Gillespie growing up in Greenville, but still, I mean, you got an official visit, 48 hours as a center of retention. That's a whole different ballgame than Jalen Carey. Oh, I played an away game there and stayed at the Marriott. It's a whole. I mean,
and they still have those visits, Rob. In theory, Tennessee can elect to bring both these kids in to help recruit other players.
100%. They can be in, like, maybe I don't know anything, so don't go crazy, but maybe this weekend. I mean, you think this traditionally, the spring football game weekend is a big one here in portal season, and it'd be a free trip home for Jacoby, basically.
Well, and they're not done. Tennessee's not
done.
No. I mean, everybody needs to understand, whether it's a prep school, whether it's a high school kid because they're still swinging, there, or whether it's a Gillespie's teammate and Rodney Rice or somebody else that's still going in the portal right now. Rob, they've got to continue to get more bodies to build this roster out. Everybody should keep that in mind.
100%. They want to add another guard. I mean, a shooter. I'd call it a shooter. I mean, I don't know if they have parameters, but they definitely want another shooter, somebody that's a 3-point guy. The kid from LMU certainly on the board. UNC Greensboro guy certainly on the board. You mentioned Rodney Rice. I mean, no, they're not done, and absolutely still swinging when Nate Ament. I mean, that, who knows what's going on there? That sounds absolutely crazy, but Tennessee's apparently in it.
I was going to say, Austin or Rob, I mean, how real is that? Because it feels like for a while now, Tennessee's been, 4th, 5th. There's interest there, but they're not a true contender. I mean, it feels like that's changed here lately.
Well, I mean, I think it's changed. I mean, there's 3 or 4 teams left in it, and Tennessee's one of them. I mean, it's as real as it gets. I mean, I don't even want to speculate. The stuff we're hearing is crazy. I mean, it's all out there, but Tennessee's in it. AP, would you not concur?
Yeah, absolutely. Tennessee's a realistic landing spot for Nate Ament, and Tennessee's had several conversations with him the last few days. So that's absolutely real. And I mean, back to the visit thing. I mean, if you're Jalen Carey, Rob, why visit? You're averaging 18 points a game when you play at Food City Center. I mean, it doesn't, home away from home.
I mean, that says a mouthful about what Hubbard's talking about, how attractive it is to and it also tells you these parents, and maybe not so much Gillespie because they had a lot of boots on the ground, people around that could talk to and reach out. But a kid like Jalen Carey, it's not just a phone call with Rick Barnes. It's like, I guarantee you, he's talking to his high school coach. He's talking to assistants at Vanderbilt, and they're maybe not him, but his parents are definitely investigating. It's not like the kid just decided, I want to play, but they've asked around and heard a lot of really good things.
Rob, why is the head coach so comfortable in portal season? I mean, it seems there's two things that seem unorthodox. One, the fact that he and Kelvin Sampson are like buddies. I know they're North Carolina natives, but that seems they seem a little bit opposite of each other, and not in their style of basketball play, but personalities. There's some differences there, but maybe the bigger thing is that the embracing of this whole window, the way that Rick Barnes has embraced it. And I mean, you talked to him a good bit. Why has this been the case? I mean, it's why is he comfortable in getting a player from some other college ranks? Why is this been comfortable for him?
I've got a few theories on not only why is he so comfortable, why he's so good at it. I mean, first off, it's like speed dating. Like if you see that you show up with singles, you sit down with 30 different builds. Anyway, I think the way he goes about his business works well right here in recruiting, because honesty. I mean, hardcore bare bones honesty. I mean, I don't know how other guys are recruiting, but I bet there's some kids out there that are hearing some absolute BS in the portal at this time of year. They're talking about money, and especially kids and parents who have been other places and it's not worked out, or they, what they were told didn't come to pass. I mean, I think that this guy is a breath of fresh air for people who have had, experiences that weren't the greatest, because he's just not going to sugarcoat anything. Pull a player in and say, hey, JP, what I told you it was tough, wasn't it, or something like that. I think his just bare bones honesty really works well right here. And man, I think he has such a sense of, like, when the season's over, of exactly what he needs, that he embraces it. I'm not saying he wants to run kids off, but like, I can promise you, he was wondering exactly how he's going to build this roster Sunday night after they lost to Houston last week. He's ultra comfortable with it, man. He really is. And I think the honesty factor really appeals to older kids and their parents when they're looking for a new start.
So, Rob, I got two questions. I'm going to ask them separately, okay? Okay. You said he knew exactly how he wanted to construct this team and all that. We know defense is going to be super, super important, but of the pieces that they have right now for this roster, what is this team? What's the style going to be? What should fans expect from this group so far, knowing that they're still not done?
I mean, I don't think they're going to change drastically, but Brent, me and you talked about it, and I mean, and coach it and blind to it. Hubbard had the stat. Hubbard, what was it? The 3-point shooting in wins versus losses.
I don't remember.
I was trying to give it to you. Hubbard's 36% in wins, 26% in losses.
Okay.
I mean, Hubbard, that's Hubbard's stat. He dug it up, but that's. And I don't want to oversimplify things, and I'm not going to say they're going to change dramatically, but the head coach wants some shooters. I mean, he is well aware of how limited they were, last year, and bringing in a guy like Carey was a huge priority, because unless the guy's driving in there and absolutely, drawing 2 or 3 people and dishing it for somebody, Tennessee wasn't getting offense out of the post, and that was running all over the head coach, and so. Yeah. I think now, Eric, more shooters and maybe a big athletic wing, like the LMU kid or the UNC Greensbury guy, but anybody from here on out that they take, I think is going to be somebody that you have to guard at the 3-point line.
Rob, is it just fair to say that they're not necessarily a style of play, but what he's looking for offensively is they've just got to have more floor balance?
I think that's a great way of putting it.
And what I mean, like, the ball can go in the post and something can happen. Yep. And if you ISO there, maybe that guy can go and get fouled or get to the rim and make a play. And if you feel like you have to double, now you're creating some spacing issues on for the inside out action.
I think that's a great way of saying it. It's got to be more balanced, because it wasn't. I think everybody saw it at some point in time. They realized last year they had 3 guys that could score, and they built everything around it.
So, Rob, is there 4 spots open now?
Hang on, we got the we got 4 coming back. They added 2, 6. They got 3 freshmen, 9, 4, 13.
Okay, and Tennessee didn't have them all filled up this past year, so they might not fill them all up. But
I would say a good chance they don't fill them all. And I think that's going to be not uncommon in the portal era. But I think they will have more than 9 healthy scholarship players when they break camp next year.
Gotcha. So at least adding at least one more, probably 2.
Oh, for sure, one more. I mean, I would say minimum 2. And I mean, I don't know who they are right now, but I mean, they're working.
Gotcha. All right, Tennessee basketball continuing to build and rebuild, I guess is the right reload after another Elite Eight run. Off to a good start. Jacoby Gillespie and Jalen Carey in the boat, and we'll see exactly where Rick Barnes wants to point to next. That is Tennessee basketball recruiting in the transfer portal. Spring scrimmage number 2, that happened Monday morning, and Brent Hubbs, it felt like Josh Heupel pleased with the way the defense set the tone for the day, the offense from an operations standpoint and all that. Probably better in scrimmage 1 than this past one, but the defense has a lot to do with that.
Well, we're still waiting for Josh Heupel to come in and say something was bad, right? Like they had a bad scrimmage. It was awful. But I mean, I think this is what you expected to Austin on Monday is, if one side of the ball has an advantage or wins the day, so to speak, in scrimmage 1, then typically the other side of the ball, if you have a solid football team and a good football team, is going to bounce back. I don't know if that's the case when you are an average football team, but when you're where Tennessee is with this roster, you would expect them to bounce back. And sounds like that first team defense in the first couple of series set a tone, and then it probably evened itself out a little bit better, just like probably in scrimmage 1 after the early play of the offense, it evened itself out a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're hoping for that bounce back for the other side of the ball. And now you're hoping, going into the Saturday, which again, it won't be a true, diehard scrimmage. You're hoping the offense bounces back and makes some plays. And, you're just hoping the players continue to progress individually. I think that's the biggest thing this time of year is seeing the growth out of Sam Pendleton and Sham Umarov and Edwin Spillman and, all these different players along the way, right? I mean, you're hoping, and we see Edwin Spillman there, you're hoping to see some growth out of guys like Caleb Beasley and John Slaughter and some of those players in the back end. And I think that's where so much of, what we've seen the last couple of weeks and then what we'll see the rest of this week comes into play, because they're not doing an abundance of 11-on-11 scrimmage work. When they do, there's limitations on it as far as tackling and so on and so forth. You just need to see continued growth out of, the players that you feel like can help you come September.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Eric, you're at the point now where I'm not saying you mail it in by any means, but what you really want to do is you're wanting to make sure you're as healthy as you can be come Saturday evening about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock when this thing is over, so that everybody can get dialed into the next phase, which is off-season development, off-season workouts. You don't want any kind of real injury here down the stretch, because this is an already beat up football team as it is, which is why they'll be cautious in what they do, I think, Saturday in the orange and white game. But I think Austin's exactly right. It's all about the individuals right now. I mean, if you're going to that thing on Saturday and you're going to watch, you should be watching from an individual lens and not from like a group lens of, okay, this is what this side of the ball looks like, or this side. It's all about how individuals play.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, spring practice, any camp, it's not necessarily what you do. I mean, it matters. It's not necessarily what you do in scrimmage 1 to scrimmage 2 to scrimmage 3. It's what you do on accumulation of days. What did you do from week 1 to week 2? What did you do from week 2 to week 3? And you're here at the end. This is the last week of spring ball. You're going to have a practice tomorrow. You have a practice on Friday that I'm sure is going to be a walkthrough or a run through. And then you're going to play that orange and white game and get some contact work in on Saturday. So you want to try to exit it as injury-free as possible. Having said all of that, though, Austin, what do you want to see from an individual perspective, I guess, on Saturday? What do you want to, when you go to the Neyland Stadium to cover this orange and white game, what do you want to walk away from saying, okay, that box was here, it was checked?
Yeah, I think, you want to see what Travis Smith looks like, what Rodarius Jackson looks like. Any of the, Braylon Staley, if he's able to go. Obviously, he did not scrimmage on Monday. Mike Matthews, what does the offensive line look like? And then what does the secondary look like? So that's where I'm looking at coming up on Saturday. And again,
where are they at the secondary? Obviously, a lot of young guys been pushed in and out of the lineup there the last couple of weeks. Jamal McCoy's not out there. That's a lot of opportunity for that big group of freshmen early enrollees. Kind of where are they with those young guys in the secondary?
Well, Hubbard, I mean, they love what they're getting out of Ty Redmond. Dylan Lewis is trying to find his footing. Same thing with a number of guys like Trey Poteet, and this is a young secondary, and I think a lot of it, how they finish out spring ball will depend on like what does Tennessee do? Where do they feel like Jermon McCoy's at in his recovery? And then what do they think about, some of these young players? Because if McCoy's a little bit behind, don't you think they potentially have to look at the portal maybe, to fill a void? But I mean, it's a young group that's at least flashed.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're healthy, you know who you are. I mean, you know where you're at.
Yeah.
The question is, can you be healthy with McCoy? Because that's the one injury that you're dealing with. And what's your depth look like at corner behind them? Do you feel like you're okay, with Ricky Gibson, with Jalen McMurray, and then Jamal McCoy when he gets back, and you're hoping and believing in a couple of these young kids to be depth pieces? To me, the biggest thing in the secondary for me is who's the star behind Boo Carter. I think that's the biggest X factor, because I know who the potentials at corner are. And you can, if you think a guy's got some talent, we've seen Ricky Gibson play as a freshman. You can see some corners there. But for me, the biggest question is, who do they think their backup nickel guy is? Who is that behind Boo Carter? That's the biggest secondary thing I want to see when I watch this team on Saturday is who is that guy and how does that guy perform? Because I think that's the biggest thing you have to get settled because of how important that position is.
Don't you think, though, they can hide that a little bit? Because, I mean, like,
I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to hide that one.
Well, no, I think
hard to hide that position.
Well, what I'm saying is, yeah, hard to hide it in the season, but like, unless you're the backup and you're going against your number one top, like if the backup is going against Dayton Sneed in the slot at the nickel spot, to me that's harder to judge versus going against Braylon Staley.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I'm just curious to see who it is.
Yeah.
And where do they think they are? Do they think they have somebody that can play that? Or is this hey, we're going to slide Christian Charles to star as the backup star, because remember, if you're going to play Boo Carter, he's going to return all your punts and he's going to play some snaps on offense. I mean, you're probably going to have to play a couple of guys early in the season at star some. Who is that guy? Is it just an emergency guy, or do you feel like you have a guy? That's what I'm curious to see. And I don't know that based on his competition level, who it is. I'm just curious to see who they put back there as their number 2 right now.
So that's a little bit of the defensive backfield, the star depth, the star and corner depth, if you will, as it's continuing to be a work in progress. Defensive tackle feels like they still probably need to look there in the portal. What other position groups could they potentially look for when the spring portal opens up, based on what we know now from 2.5 weeks or whatever spring practice? More than that.
Well, I mean, I think the question becomes, where do you think you are at receiver? And Josh Heupel was asked about this on Monday, Rob, and he danced the best he could dance around it and said it's hard to keep everybody happy, and but you also got to make sure what your roster looks like. So where do they think they are at receiver coming out of spring ball? Do they have enough numbers, or do they need more numbers? I think that is an unknown. I think you're always going to look to take an interior defensive lineman if there's a good one out there. But I think the question becomes, what do they think they need to do at the receiver position?
Yeah, I wrote it today, Hubbard. I guess I didn't realize that Brazel had 33 catches last year, which more experience than I thought. But then you go from him and you go down to Mike Matthews, and 8 receptions on the year. I mean, I think you clearly have some talent there, Amari Jefferson, but golly, man, lots of unknowns. And I agree. I mean, I do think that I don't have the numbers, but don't receivers probably bounce maybe more than any other position per capita? But I still think it's got to be odd. For Tennessee's in an odd spot with Brazel being the most experienced guy in this unit.
I don't think. I mean, yes, they're in an odd spot because of the the youth there, Rob. I don't think it's an odd spot from a standpoint. Like, I think you have to take somebody. I think it would be a major misstep to not take somebody. To this point, Amari Jefferson's not going to show you anything because he's been limited, and Joakim Dotson's not here yet. So you don't know what you have there, right? Like, is he ready? Will he be ready? Those type of things. I think that you have to absolutely take a receiver in the transfer portal window in the spring, because even if you look at the end here of spring ball, Braylon Staley did not practice on Monday. Well, I mean, even if it's a nick and bruise, like, you get those during the season. Let's say he can't play against Mississippi State. You're going to need more bodies at receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you from that injury standpoint. I think the question is this: one, what talent level, what caliber player is going to be out there available to you? Is it somebody who has some concept of maybe something that you do offensively, or is it going to be so Greek to them that you can't get ready? And then, I mean, they played what, 5 guys last year at receiver on a regular basis? And I mean, Squirrel White was hurt all year, and he played the whole season hurt. I mean, they didn't play. I mean, they didn't play a lot of Mike Matthews. They didn't take the red shirt off Staley last year. I mean, how deep are they willing to play numbers wise at that position? I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think because here's the hard part when you're putting and doing roster things. For me, I think you can look at every position right now and say you need one more, with the exception of maybe quarterback, okay, or running back. But everywhere else you could say, because you're sitting there like, all right, when's Miles Kitselman coming back? Do we need an experienced tight end because we don't have any experience at that position? And you want to play 2 tight ends. Do you need a tight end? Do you need another offensive tackle? Do you need receiver? Do you need another linebacker? Do you need another defensive tackle? I mean, every coach always wants more. And I think that's interesting. Where's that balance of creating a little more depth, and is the guy talented enough to help you? Right, AP? I mean, I think from a number standpoint, receiver, I agree with you 100% from a number standpoint. But are you going to get an extra guy who's really going to be capable of helping you is my question.
Well, I think they just need a body. I really do. I mean, I'm not saying – don't get me wrong. You want to get a player that can help you play. But I honestly think they need another warm body. I mean, you look at where they're at right now, and, let's say –
So you think they need 9 or 10 receivers?
I think they need at least 8. Right now they have 7. And that's
Dotson's coming would be 8.
No. He is 7. They have the 3 that are back. They have Amari Jefferson, which makes 4, and the 3 true freshmen. That's 7. 7 scholarship receivers. So I think they need an 8th. Yes, okay. I do, absolutely.
Well, I mean, their hand was almost forced in the playoff, and I understand there were some guys in the transfer portal. There were some injuries there, but I mean, you were a snap away from being what? Brew McCoy in the slot?
I'm not disagreeing with either one of you guys, and I'm not disagreeing with Austin on the numbers and the fact that they're short there. My question is, what's the value? Because you're not going to get somebody out of the portal who's a warm body, who's not going to cost you some money, and so what's going to be available to you out there that you can look at and say there's value in bringing that person in that's more than just a warm practice body and a third team emergency guy.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, there's a balance of, like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, if some awesome receiver in the portal, you're not turning a player away.
Sure.
But, like, there's a difference between, like, a guy who maybe in his mind thinks he should be a starter and a guy who's probably just a backup, and is comfortable being that fourth, fifth receiver. So yeah, I mean, there's a balance there. And then how do you walk the tightrope? And then of course you got the money piece. I mean, there are a lot of other factors out there. I'm just saying, if you can make it work, you make it work, because you just don't know what it's going to look like. I mean, how many times have you got into fall camp and all of a sudden you're 2 weeks in, there's a kid out for a month with a broken foot, and Another one tweaked an ankle, and all of a sudden you're like, Dayton Steve, get in there.
Moving from wide receiver up front to the offensive line, it felt like running the football was pretty good in Monday's scrimmage. You guys talk about this at the 2-minute drill about the two transfers kind of, assembling into that relook or that new look offensive line. Where are they at up front? Where's a guy like Sham, who it feels like has had a pretty decent spring? David Sanders continuing to progress at right tackle. How's that unit up front coming along now that you're almost at the end of spring practice?
Austin, correct me if I'm wrong. Here's my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong here. I feel like you're going to exit spring on the offensive line feeling like you have more options than you felt like you had going into spring practice. Now, what does that look like? I don't know, but that's my feeling. Give me your thoughts, Austin.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think there's, at least 5 bodies in the interior that you feel really good about, with Sham and Jesse Perry and Moy and Pendleton and Satterwhite, that are all kind of somewhat interchangeable. I think Max Anderson has continued to come on. David Sanders continues to progress and come on at tackle. Lance Hurd, Larry Johnson. Again, you got, Bennett Warren has flashed some. It needs to continue to be more consistent, I'm told, but has certainly flashed in spring practice. And so I do think you have more able bodies and more depth and more combinations than maybe you knew you had when you started spring practice, 3 weeks ago.
This could be viewed as a negative, but anybody jump in here. Are you disappointed you haven't heard more out of Lance Hurd this spring, or do you think it's a positive that you haven't heard a lot out of Lance Hurd this spring? Everybody can jump in here at will.
I think it's a positive that he's not on the injury report. He's practicing. And so for me, if he's practicing, he's there every day. Say what?
There's an injury report?
Yeah, in the Volquest observations every time. The fact that he's out there just head down working, I mean, I don't need to hear anything from him. He's a left tackle, right? I mean, I think that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. It's just good that he's out there actually getting some reps in because, injuries are part of the game. I get that, but that hurt him last fall, when he missed pretty much all camp.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to, did you need to hear, man, he's taken a huge step versus, he's practiced. Like, I'm saying? Where's the connotation in that? Well, he's been out there every day versus, wow, he took a real step. Or did you need just to hear the guy's been consistent day in and day out on the practice field, as Eric said, Austin, putting his head down, going to work?
That's a great question. I really don't know the answer because I think ultimately you'd love to hear Lance has taken a huge step, but I also think there is you don't have anybody going, now Lance is not very good. Lance has been pedestrian. Nobody's saying that either. So it's I guess it's all in how you want to look at it. You want to look at it from a pessimistic look. You can think you didn't hear that he'd taken a huge step. You want to look from an optimistic, standpoint, silence is a good thing.
Might be an overreach by Hubs, right? Might be an overreach question.
It's a fair question.
It's an interesting way to look at it for sure, especially at that position too, because receiver, it's he made a great catch. Oh, he caught a touchdown in the scrimmage. Oh, he did all that. Left tackle, it's well, did you give up a pressure today? I don't know. I wasn't there. So I just think for him, he just needs to be on the practice field. And of course, you need to take steps and get better. And he's at least been doing that this spring in terms of practicing.
Yeah.
Recruiting. Tons of guys have been on campus, had a lot of guys on campus this past weekend. More guys are coming in this weekend for the orange and white game. You and Matt did a 2-minute drill Saturday afternoon. Kind of give us the highlights a little bit of, who Tennessee moved the needle with this past weekend.
I think Tennessee definitely moved the needle with Tommy Tope. Matt had that story with him on Monday, offensive tackle. Good-looking kid. I think, where they at, I think they're certainly a factor. Don't want to call Tennessee the leader, but I think they moved the needle enough to where they're up there for Tommy. Tennessee moved the needle for Moose. Ludwig. Matt Ludwig's his real name. He goes by Moose. Why not when you're from Montana? But Moose is a big kid, athletic kid. Tennessee would absolutely take him to go along with Carson Sneed. They like him that much, and Sneed is one who's continued to take visits. And if you're Tennessee, you continue to recruit Ludwig just in case, and if you land both, and cherry on top. but Michigan's in play there. So is Notre Dame. Tennessee's bringing him back in May for an official visit. I think that's a good thing instead of like encompassing 20 people around him in June. He's going to get kind of a lot of one-on-one time in May on an official visit. I think that could be a really good thing when you factor in the kid is from Montana and, can just kind of get a lot of one-on-one time. I do think that kind of the family values that his family has and, maybe this area checks off a lot of boxes. I think that you look at, the surroundings, rivers and mountains and stuff that, certainly feels it's not totally like Montana, but it's similar enough to where, I think that's a good thing. Elsewhere, Tennessee obviously had the running back Savion Hyder on campus, on Saturday. From all accounts, visit went well. He'll be back here for his official visit in June. Don't see him making any decisions before then. But again, in this area, you never know. So, Tennessee's certainly in the mix there. Again, would not call Tennessee the leader, but I think they've done enough to where that they have a legit shot to land him. A lot of it will boil down to kind of his relationships on campus and his ability to get to the field. You're going against Georgia, you're going against Michigan, you're going against Ohio State. That's three heavy hitters. So to land Savion Hyder will be a big deal if Tennessee's able to do so.
AP, you mentioned the tight end position there with Moose. Where's Carson Snead at right now? I know he was on campus. I know he's continuing to take visits. I think 6 OVs lined up. Where's Snead in Tennessee right now?
Obviously Tennessee would love to keep Carson Snead. But the more he takes visits, the more they're going to continue to recruit others, as I said. And, if he shuts things down, I don't think Tennessee will be looking too hard outside of Moose. I think Tennessee would take 2 if Moose wanted to come. Carson's a kid who grew up a Tennessee fan. He gave Hubbs that famous quote about, him surviving the Derek Dooley and Butch Jones eras. And now he's taking visits. So that seems a bit strange to me, especially when you grew up such a Tennessee fan. And you've been committed for 8-9 months. So again, I think just kind of let it play out here and see what he decides to do. Does he take those visits, or does he not? I know he's got them penciled in or whatever, but there's a lot of best laid plans that never come to fruition.
Rob, I'm gonna give Austin a little credit here. I know that's going to be a little bit maybe tough for everybody to experience, right? I'm just kidding. I'm going to give him a little bit of credit, Rob. He's dubbed the early spring. What do you call it? The posturing period?
Yeah, that's even better. That's alliteration. It's a posturing period. I like that actually better. Posturing period.
That's kind of what early spring recruiting feels like, right?
Yes.
Everybody's just kind of posturing and sort of positioning themselves for their run to the finish line in May and June with visits and decision making. It's kind of fascinating how all this is evolving, but that is sort of what some March and April visits feel like these days.
Well, and they're also follow-ups in a lot of cases, AP, correct me if I'm wrong, where you got these kids on campus in the fall for a game, or in the best case scenario for camp last summer, before their junior year. A lot of times, these kids are coming, it's unthinkable, but is it not uncommon? It's not uncommon for a guy right now. If he's here for spring practice, it's his 3rd or 4th trip.
Yeah. I think that's a commonplace that it happens. And again, I think you're looking at everybody's kind of lining up visits and they're kind of posturing, kind of positioning themselves to figure out how they're going to manage the stretch run of their recruiting for their recruitment here. And I think there's probably been a little bit of that always. It's just at a different timeline, back in the old school days when you took and went and watched games, and on an unofficial visit, you were probably posturing yourself a little bit with different schools that way. Now you're doing that through spring practice and set itself up for what May and June look like for visits and decisions.
I'll tell you what I think it is, Hubs. To use a NASCAR analogy, this recruiting is a restrictor plate race. And you're doing a lot of just riding around early in the process. And now you're trying to, okay, where do I need to get to for those last 20 laps? And you're trying to find your spot. Is that from the lead? Is that from, 5th? Whatever. I think you're trying to figure out like, where do I position myself here for the closing, laps to the race? And I, the recruiting, I've had this conversation with you and Matt and national guys. Like, to me, it's morphing more and more and more. And it certainly feels like it's that way, where you're posturing, yes, but you're just trying to kind of find where you fit into this thing to be a player, to have a shot to win the race in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think schools are trying to figure that out, and I think kids are trying to figure it out. Like, where do I need to be that puts me in the best position to maximize my opportunity with whatever school I pick from. It's a little bit of courting, a little bit of dating this time of year without anybody making a real commitment to anybody. I mean, it's a different kind of world in the spring, and this is all because of the accelerated calendar, and this is where we are. And you've got to bring them in, you've got to give them the show, and you've got to do everything you need to be with the understanding of, hey, we're not going to close any deals here, and the kid's not going to make a decision here. The kid knows he's not going to make a decision, but they're all trying to figure out, we got to put our best foot forward to get us into the final laps, as AP just said. At the same time, too, the kid doesn't want to put himself in a position where he's been eliminated from anyone, eliminates himself from anyone during that process either.
A lot of recruiting happening right now. Tons of football for spring practice as you're heading to the home stretch here for the Orange and White game on Saturday. Baseball is happening right now. Transfer portal, obviously, very active right now for Tennessee basketball. No better place to stay up to date with all of it and so much more than on the General's Quarters and at Volquest.com. If you're watching or listening to us right now, we thank you. If you're not a member of the site, you're missing out, man. You can try for $1, 7 days, for $1 for your first 7 days. And if you like us, you can re-up. If not, you can, just continue to do what you're doing. But just the tip of the iceberg, as Brent Hubbs always says, in terms of what you could be getting by joining the site. So a lot happening right now, and we'll keep you updated. All that and more over at Volquest.com. For Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, I'm Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for joining us here on the Volquest podcast.